There we are. Okay. I'll get better and better at that. Welcome.
Welcome to the stream of truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we are streaming live from outside of Toronto. We're both under the same roof, which is exciting, although in separate rooms right now.
Yeah, when we're together, we like to spend as much time apart as possible. So no, it's just easier for us to do it this way, I think.
I get a little too distracted next to this amazing
It is totally different when we're right beside each other. It's harder in many ways, but also more fun in many ways too. So
yeah, it's fun, but I get a little distracted by your amazing energy. So today's topic is divine partnership, and traversing disagreements.
Yeah.
This is important to figure out. Oh my goodness.
I don't think Tassel and I have ever had a disagreement ever. About anything. Ever.
We have, I would say, had a bit of an intense couple of months around seeming disagreements, but maybe they were all misunderstandings. I'm not even sure.
I think, common for us is that our disagreements they're more just misunderstandings a lot of the time.
Yeah.
A lot of it's from texting.
We should never text about anything important.
Basically, yeah.
Ever.
Basically.
Just keep it to like, how's the weather? What time do you want to get on Zoom? So nothing important.
That's the first tip. That's the only tip, actually. Just don't stop texting each other.
The only tip here is don't text anything important. So I think one of the reasons, I don't know if this is what you were thinking of when you made the episode description and the title, is you've been in a certain consciousness recently. And I think maybe we were feeling a little bit of a disconnect on some of the previous streams, maybe the last two or something. And I know it felt, I'll just say for me, I felt kind of uncomfortable. I wasn't sure how to like relate to you, I guess. It wasn't really so much what you were saying. It was more, you seemed kind of in your own world or something. I didn't feel like super connected to you in the stream.
Yeah, the outside world starts to feel beautiful, but not so much focus is there. So yeah, I'll probably tend to appear a little more spacey, it's not that I'm not there or not paying attention, but yeah, I think that's a bit of a byproduct of what I've been doing. And we have a new viewer. Hey, I'm new here. What is this stream about? It's about truth. We're talking about consciousness, truth, spirituality, relationships, stuff like that.
This is probably a good time to stream, actually, sometimes a little later in the day, because usually we stream at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
Maybe more people can come at this time.
Yeah, so I guess what inspired me to choose this topic, I chose this while Tassel was in the air flying here, so she didn't even know what we were going to talk about until she landed. And I guess what inspired me to suggest this as the stream topic was that as in an agreement we are almost all the time, we still have things that come up where we just kind of see stuff differently. Like, it's not necessarily we're disagreeing about anything, we're just seeing what's occurring differently. And that difference in perspective can cause conflict as well. So not just our yes, this is live. Hey Joe.
Wait, Joe's here?
Joe's here.
Hey Joe.
So that disconnect is not necessarily about disagreements or, like actually having opposing viewpoints necessarily, just that both of us have a differing perspective on something that's caused some type of confusion between us. And I guess trying to normalize that a little bit, like just express to people a little bit about how that's very normal. And what I've noticed is that we always move through it. A lot of the time when we're in the middle of it, it can almost feel like it's like the biggest thing in the world. And we both feel like that. So that makes everything more intense as well. Even though like we're talking about sometimes the smallest, like if we actually think about some of the details of what we're talking about, which we don't tend to really focus too much on the details. We're more about what principles are being agreed on or not agreed on. And, if I hold a principle of some type and Tassel doesn't seem to be abiding this principle, that might bother me, or vice versa. And you're in Texas. Joe's in Texas.
Oh, that's close to Louisiana, where Jamie is.
That's awesome. That's That's great. Texas. Beautiful.
Don't mess with Texas, baby.
And he put a little cowboy emoji. That's awesome. So basically what I noticed with us is that we always move through it, first of all. We've never had a disagreement that I'm aware of anyway that's not been sorted out eventually, and not been sort of approached. Usually what ends up happening is both of us move through it in our own kind of way, and then we end up talking about it from a place where we're both a little less emotionally involved in what's going on, because it's kind of in the past to us at that point. We've let it go. A lot of the pain that might have been there has been let go, so we can look at it more objectively.
And it usually seems that we up level after each one of these experiences somehow. There's like more trust and more intimacy when this has come up. And I don't know about for you, but when I really think about what goes on for me, what the fear usually is just somehow like something's gonna like bring us apart. Like, okay, your new consciousness that you're in and dissolving your ego. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean like you won't care about your relationships or something? So I think for me, that's really what's underneath everything, is a fear of what does this mean for us?
Yeah. And then for me, it's felt like what I've been trying to do to try and offset some of that has been very open about how the perspectives are shifting and like what's happening to me. And some of I'm hearing sort of the voice of God or Jesus, basically, a lot, constantly, almost, just on repeat. Like quotes that I don't know, I'm not familiar with, or new phraseology of like verses. It just sounds like Bible speak in many ways. And so I've been, expressing a lot of this stuff to Tassel, and talking a lot about my experience. But some of my sharing has caused her to feel some fear as well around what I'm saying, which then in turn causes me to feel like, oh, I'm not being accepted in this new state, and I'm trying to be transparent. And so it makes me question if I should be transparent or if I should just hold it to myself, because I don't really want to cause fear or discomfort, right? So I get put in this place where it doesn't feel super comfortable to share anymore. Not because of Tassel doing anything wrong. It's totally normal for her to have these reactions. I'm having the same reactions, in fact. Like, I have the same fears. But from my perspective, it's not, I'm the one in the experience, so it's a little easier for me to navigate out of those fears. So, but yeah, so that's been a big thing for us lately, is just having trouble kind of connecting that way. And yeah, like you said, like it's the same fear. So when you feel like I can't maybe I'll drift away from this shifting that's happening. I feel like maybe I'll drift away from this shifting that's happening because clearly it's uncomfortable for her. Maybe she won't put up with it, or maybe she won't be interested in sticking around to see not this part that's a little wavy, a little rocky and bumpy in the sort of transformation stage that I'm in. But after that, I think I'm going to be pretty blissed out. And so if she could just hang on for a bit, then I think everything will normalize and it'll be a lot smoother. But right
And I
now,
think also,
it's challenging.
yeah, and also what's like very interesting is we met 2 years ago this past week, and the entire time that I've known you, you've been shifting the entire time.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been shifting too. I think yours tend to be a bit more dramatic.
I've been like just our lives and our orientations and how we approach the world right now in our lives are just very different, right? Like you have the kids all often, you're busy with all that. I don't have to do that, and so I'm able to just laser focus on ascension, which is basically my goal is to be able to teach with a purity that is approaching Christ-like. That's my goal. If not Christ-like in purity. So that's the goal. I don't think it's that lofty. I think it's totally reachable. I think it seems lofty, but I don't think it is. I think it's a direct reality and specifically what I'm supposed to do. And the only thing that I do that seems to have true lasting meaning, like, so I can do something nice with you or with my kids, and those are great experiences, but those experiences are sort of transitory and they're nice, but the real laser focus of my being is to try and do this, and it's through the relationship that I've been able to do it primarily. It's the relationship that's been able to serve me towards that. So,
Well,
yeah.
and it's kind of interesting because I think what you just said, sometimes I think about that and I'm kind of like, what is his like real priority? Is it our relationship? Is it his own ascension or his own mission here? And then I think about that for me too. And it's kind of hard if I think about it for myself, it's kind of hard to say. It's kind of I think of it in a way as all the same. Like my ascension is tied in with our relationship as well as my mission. It's all a bit inseparable.
Yeah, that's sort of how I see it. I don't separate anything from my ascension. So that work's happening always, regardless of what I'm doing or not doing. So, like you said, it all melds together. So when I say my laser focus is on my ascension or my, healing and balancing, whatever we call it, all I'm really saying is that 90% or more of my focus is on that outcome that I feel is the outcome. All the other things that I do are priorities of the doer, like priorities of the human self to facilitate the ascension. And so, the relationship becomes a really high priority to maintain, because the relationship is one of the major vehicles for that, and also all the other benefits from it too. So it can sound like I'm saying I don't care about other things or something like that, but it's not like that. It's more like I care about everything so much that I'm able to use every experience as a lot of catalyst. Like, I'm getting as much out of every experience as I can as best as I can, as consistently as I can. So I'm like more involved in the things than it might seem, I guess, in the way that I phrase things and stuff like that. Uh, but but yeah, it's as far as you know, there has to be, in order to reach like a consistent, really, really high sort of peace state, we have to be non-attached to what is with us. So there's a portion of it where, like, and I think if we, like, if Tassel were to decide that she didn't want to be in the relationship, for example, I have to be able to be happy about that, right? That outcome has to be a happy outcome for me. And the outcome where she stays with me has to be a happy outcome too. And that feels, to the human self, like I still feel that just saying that feels painful a little, right? Because what we're not letting go of the relationship or how we think about it or care about it. What we're letting go of is fear around its dissolution. So it's not that I would prefer it to not go, or that I don't care if it went either way. It's more that I'm letting go of the fear, which is the fear of the loss of the attachment is what disturbs the peace. It's not the attachment itself that disturbs the peace. It's the fear that comes up with all attachment, is the opportunity to lose. And when the opportunity to lose exists, the mind will generate fear because it could lose this or that. So it's actually a more of a coming together of all of it. But when we talk about it, it can sound like I'm saying it doesn't matter which way, what happens. I'm happy either way. I couldn't care less. That's what it sounds like. And that it's the goal to be happy either way. That's the goal, right? We've been teaching this, but when it comes into the sort of the reality of our lives and me and our relationship and how I talk about it, and you know, then it becomes challenging to speak about it without sounding like it doesn't matter to me, when it matters a lot, right? So it's a strange place, and I think I'm learning how to even talk about it, because you know, I could have, you know, part of me wanted to go another way and like pretend that that's not what I see as clearly what should happen. You know, like it's clear to me, and I think the way I just explained it, like if you're attached to something, you will fear losing it. Eventually, you're going to fear it, something about it, because you're attached. So if you're not attached, then you're not going to fear. But non-attachment isn't non-involvement or non-committal or non-participatory or any of that stuff. And it doesn't mean that you have no preferences. It just means you're not attached to your preferences. You're like humbled a little that it's not up to me what Tassel does. It's obvious, right? It's obvious if we take that stance and look at it that way, that I would have to figure out a way to be happy if she were to leave. I'd have to figure that out. Why not figure that out before she leaves? Right? Like, not presuming she'll leave or anything. Just kind of doing this, right? Hopefully everything's going to be great. I trust that everything is going to be great. You know, she's been very consistent and stuck through a whole bunch of wacky stuff. So, you know, I don't have a fear about that. But that's really all it's about, is, for me anyway, letting go of fears that they don't help. And actually that fear, that attachment to Tassel will cause a desperation type of energy in me, which will then influence our interactions in some way too. Like the dancing that we've talked about a couple times, for example. That's a perfect example of where she's just trying to do something fun for herself. And then I go, oh, here's some poop. Put some poop on that good experience. Like I kind of ruin it a little bit for her. And, you know, I think we got to an okay place with that particular thing, but it's attachment that causes those reactions. It's attachment to people and thinking you know what they should do, what would be kind of them to do, what you would prefer them to do, and then them not doing that, you're upset, right? They haven't met your expectations in some way, and your expectations are generally entirely unreasonable. So, and that's sort of what I've noticed in myself, is that all expectations of people are nonsense. You know, that there's, how arrogant is it of me to presume that another should show themselves to me in some way, shape, or form, just so I'm comfortable, right? It's, they should show themselves as they prefer to show themselves to me.
I do think
right?
there's something really precious here, though. What we're talking about is that I think it's, to me, very intimate and very beautiful to share sort of the heart's desire, maybe. Or, you know, maybe it could be, you could say it's an egoic desire, but I sort of see it as like a heart's desire of wanting a particular type of closeness or exclusivity between divine partners or any type of partner. And I think it's just the way we ended up talking about some of these things, we ended up kind of injuring each other. But underneath that, I think there really is something very beautiful. And I remember texting you this. I said something like, I feel like we are missing something here that's very beautiful and very vulnerable, especially for a man to express, like, it would be my preference if you only danced with me, or it would be my preference if, like, we talked about it before you went out to dinner with an old boyfriend or whatever. To me, I actually think that's something very beautiful.
Yeah.
For you to have shared with me, and very vulnerable. And I think that really creates intimacy. We didn't maybe talk about it in a way that, like, totally served our, but it all serves. But like the way we ended up talking about it was maybe a little painful, but I feel very grateful that you were opening up to me more in this way and expressing preferences. Because for a long time in our relationship, I would say to you, I want you to ask me for something. I want you to, like, kind of tell me you want something or you don't want something, because you didn't for a long time.
Well, yeah, when we kind of got together, I was in the state that they call the void. A lot of people get stuck there. Where, you know, there's nothing to say to people about what they're doing. It's hard to describe. They're doing what they're doing. And they're not even doing anything. It's a weird, very odd place to perceive from. So what ends up happening in that state is you are very indifferent in a way to, you know, what people sort of choose, because you've become sort of supremely non-attached to the body and the environment. But that becomes a balancing thing that you then have to come back and sort of re-engage. So, but you bring up a really good point. It's really important to make a distinction that I'm not saying that the desire that I have for some type of closeness, or my desire for us to talk about something before it occurs, is problematic in any way. That's just seems like a working towards harmony in the partnership, and vulnerability, intimacy, and honesty, authenticity, all those things. That's all great. The issue wasn't that I had a preference or anything. The issue was that I had an expectation. So I had expectations that were you know, unreasonable. Also, I was being a hypocrite as well. I often do things without realizing how it might affect you. And, you know, in my mind, these particular things just seemed so obvious that how could she not realize, right? So um, it for me, I couldn't fathom that really. So I was being a bit of a hypocrite, and I had all these expectations that I didn't really realize that I had, and so yeah, the issue isn't like that we have preferences or we should share what our preferences are in these certain areas necessarily, but it's when we have expectations that our preferences are met. Even if I share my preference with you, it's still unreasonable for me to presume you'll adhere to that
Yeah.
all the time, right? That, like, not only do you sometimes just make an error or like, just innocently forget to think of something, I do it all the time. So it's the expectation, really, that is the issue, not necessarily preferring certain types of
Yeah.
interactions or over others, right?
Right.
Like if you were always yelling at me and calling me names, it wouldn't make sense for me to like stick around in that type of thing, right? It would, you know, I wouldn't, but it's not likely that that type of thing is going to be an experience that I have. But
So it's also really interesting you sharing that for the first part of our relationship, you were in the void and
I was
maybe
in and out of it a bit. Yeah.
so that's why I started doing things and I really didn't think you cared because you, I guess, were in this more indifference orientation. So I really I had no idea that you had preferences around some of these things. I really did not think you did have
Yeah.
preferences. And honestly, I'm happy that you have preferences. That feels a lot more intimate to me.
Well, okay. So, and I don't want to sound like I'm talking myself up, but this will probably sound that way anyway. Um, I see a lot of stuff, and I don't know how else to say that other than I see a lot of intricacies of things that are happening around me or within me, in other people, whatever. You could call it psychic if you want. Everyone could do this. I just seem to have a skill at it, and I was aware of preferences that I had around you that I specifically just didn't mention because there's a part of me that wants these things to be addressed. I'm aware that these are areas that will cause me pain later. I should move through them now, right? And so I think I've told this to you before, like part of the reason that I don't mention some of the preferences is because I actually want you to push against my weaknesses a little bit to strengthen me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware that that's happening. And so it's kind of like I'm a little aware of my lesson plan, and like I know that I could say my preference is this, and then you may actually just adhere to that preference because you agree with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's nice, but that doesn't help me with my shadow so much, right? That helps me. Yeah, we have some harmony, but my healing doesn't really happen because I haven't been hurt by this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we've just manipulated our circumstance to make me comfortable, which is not what I'm learning. I'm learning to be comfortable regardless. So it's a disservice to me to try to form your behavior in any way, in depending on what we're talking about. And so it becomes for me this kind of balancing act of if I feel really strongly about something, I'm less likely to tell you it's a preference. Basically, the stronger I feel about it, the less likely I am to bring it up as a preference because I realize this is something that needs to be healed. And if I don't bring it up, eventually something's going to come in and trigger it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoping. And also, I'm also a little cautious and scared of what's going to happen. And that's part of the reason, too, that, like, you go dancing, and I'm like, this could go way beyond what I really want to have as a lesson. Like, it could go into some territory that I'm not at all interested in going into. Uh, but I have to just accept that this is the lesson, and that's why when we were the dancing thing, I was like, "Go dance, go." I was very, very unraveled by it all, very out of balance with it, just because of my past experience with women, basically, um, and not being able to trust them more or less, in so many different ways, and so yeah, so I have a new appreciation for expressing these things, but I still am aware that if I have a really strong pull to not to like I don't want her to do that, then I need to just sit with it and let you do as you please, because it's not appropriate. It's for me to feel that way. It's just not appropriate to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying. And I'll share that I would say over, say, the past 2 months or so, there's been a lot of, I don't know exactly what to call it, like friction or I don't know, like disconnect at times. And it's been very, very challenging for me because my human just wants connection and harmony and lovey-doveyness. My human loves that so much. But sort of on this side of it, after these past 2 months, internally, I'm different. It changed me.
Yeah.
I don't know if the word would be non-attachment, but or equanimity. I got to a place where I just had to be like, whatever happens, I got to be okay with it. Like I can't continue to just go up and down like, oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God. Oh my God. I can't keep doing that.
Yeah. And so that
it forged in me just so much inner peace, no matter what was happening with you. I just got to a place of whatever happens, it's okay.
That's kind of the point of it.
Yeah.
That's
I had to kind of let go of any particular outcome because it was too painful. It was too painful to like go up and down all the time. It was too painful.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the expansion I was supposed to take of like, I hope it works out. I hope we continue to be partners. But it's also okay if it doesn't. Like I can't just live like that. I can't live like that.
Yeah, it becomes obvious that it's our fear of losing it that is the problem. And
yeah.
So we have to we get confronted with that fear.
Yeah, exactly.
So nothing that none of us were trying to instill these fears in each other, right? Like nothing I was doing was trying to instill this fear in you or to bring these things up. What happens is one of us or both, someone gets upset, the other person then gets upset too, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then because we feel that differently, express it differently, handle it differently, it just starts to become a mess.
Yeah.
And then neither of us feel like it's getting resolved because we're both upset, basically. So,
yeah.
And it's easy for the person who first gets upset to think, well, they did this, and that's what started it, was they did this. But not really. It's actually the person that got upset first that kind of started it, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, I got upset about the whatever it was, the dinner thing.
Yeah.
And then, I then communicated that poorly because I was upset. And when we're upset, we tend to communicate poorly. Either we can be any way, we can be over reaching, like, or desperation, or we can be reclusive, cold, or harsh.
Yeah.
We could kind of go either way, and then the other has a response to that, and
Yeah.
so it ends up being this weird back and forth thing that happens. But it's all come from these fears that we're trying to clear, and so if we can look at it from that perspective, we can be grateful because, um, if we don't confront those fears somehow, and we've confronted them in these very small ways. Honestly, if we look at what's actually happened,
Like there's
right,
such little
nothing's
thing.
even happened, right?
Nothing's happened.
Nothing's even really happened. You didn't
Oh,
even go to the dinner. Nothing happened. So
right.
this is what I'm. This is part of what I mean when I say nothing happened. Like,
Yeah.
even when something really did happen, it's so transitory. The particulars of the events are irrelevant. All that happened was we both freaked each other out in different ways,
Yes.
and then we have to move through that fear, and then on the other side of that we have a new level of peace. Like, even in you, I noticed today you feel different, like more sturdy or something. um your presence felt more solid, or something. I don't know how to put words on it exactly, but so, and I've noticed it in myself. Like, basically, I didn't want you to go dancing. I hated it. But at the end of it all, I was like, please, if you want to go, I was fine with it, and I'm fine with it now. Literally fine. Um, it doesn't make a difference anymore because I let it all go. I let it all go because, what else am I gonna do, right?
Yeah. I feel the same way. I feel maybe what you're seeing as sturdiness is I just kind of gave everything to God, really. Like, whatever the path here is,
Yeah.
I surrender and I will be okay. And I just can't get too overly dramatic about this. It's not serving me at all. I'm going to be okay, whatever happens.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the compass to me that I've come back to is I realize I was somewhat abandoning myself, in different times throughout our relationship so far,
Yeah.
because of my fear, because of the fear of, if I'm really myself, if I really speak my truth, if I'm not so much of a people pleaser, oh, maybe I'll be abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I had this experience over this past weekend that I shared on another stream and also on a video on our You Are Your Own Hero channel, where I really didn't speak my truth with you. And then I had this experience with getting this traffic summons that I think I created through sort of this energy of not speaking my truth, basically. And it just, I don't know, just really shouted at me of, Tassel, you must be in your truth. You must stay with yourself. You must have self-solidarity, self-union above all. So I think I partly just recommitted myself to myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it feels, I hope I stay in this state. I'm in it right now.
It's the only area of consciousness
we have any control.
you have any purview over. There's nothing else you can fix or do.
I can only be there for myself, for sure.
Right.
That's all I know for sure.
Yeah, even if I promise and I'm 1,000 billion% committed to never go anywhere, I could walk out the door and get hit by a bus.
Yeah. I think I just realized, no matter what, I have to be me.
Yeah.
It's too painful to do anything else in the end. It's too painful to ever abandon myself, to ever sort of speak half truths, because I'm worried about losing the relationship. That's not sustainable.
Right. And
it's not sustainable to not be yourself.
That's probably the best practice for moving through these disagreements with your partner, is if probably both of you need to just step away from each other for a minute and look at where you're afraid. Um, Fear is what will always precipitate self-abandonment. It's
Yeah.
always fear, because the only way to abandon yourself is to basically notice that um, I'm threatened, right? And divinity can't be threatened. So if you feel threatened, then you have forgotten your divinity in the moment, which will feel like abandoning yourself. Basically, it'll feel bad, right? That's why fear doesn't feel good, because we are denying. And then what ends up happening is what Tassel said. We end up miscreating. So we create from fear with our fearful thoughts. Whether she expressed her truth or not, and how that would affect what happened is hard to say. But definitely the fear definitely would contribute to like what's coming in, right? So um
Yeah.
and the it was really interesting because I looked over the messages after to look at them, and I did a pretty good job of saying it seems like, it feels like, I am seeing this. Like I wasn't, I my energy was upset, right? But it wasn't, at least it wasn't that I could see, very accusatory in that way, or presumptive, really. It was more just, this is what I'm like observing and experiencing. I don't know what's going on. At least that's how I was intending it, right? And so I think just on your side, your being and with your learning, it was important to, for whatever reason, to amplify this feeling, right? So that would be why perhaps my words would be interpreted that way.
Well, there were a few phrases that
No, I'm sure there were. I'm not
were
trying to
not.
nitpick it. I'm just trying to say my intention wasn't to do that.
Yeah.
Like, if I ever say you did this, I don't think of the world that way. Like, I literally am just trying to speak like a human. Um,
Yeah.
I don't see that way. You did that. I don't know what you did. You didn't do anything. So I'm just pretending to be a human, basically, when I'm talking like that. And
Mhm.
so I say those things, and then you'll hear that and think, oh, he thinks I did this thing that I didn't do, and it causes this whole rift in communication. So yeah, I'm not saying that I didn't say something like that or whatever. Um, I'm just trying to say that the whatever the lesson is like sort of, it's kind of loaded. It's like it's cocked and loaded, and uh, it
The
doesn't so much matter what the other person says. I don't think it kind of
the
gets interpreted in the way that will promote the lesson. Is what I'm sort of positing here. That that it, I think if you go through all my expressions, I said maybe a bunch of things. Maybe one of them was a little presumptive sounding, or two of them, but the majority of them weren't. If you go back and read them, we could read them together if you'd like, and we could, because I'd like to be able to correct these things too. I don't want to come off presumptive, right? So, but I'm just saying that if we have a lesson within us of like fear or something that we're looking to clear, it almost doesn't really matter so much what the other person says to us. Like, we'll take from it what we need to create the experience to move through it. So this is what explains when people are totally speaking different languages, basically totally disconnected. No one knows what the other one's saying. They're working on their own things, basically. Um, so
I think
it's
what
an
was
interesting
like
thing.
what was really interesting for me in the past 2 months is you were really sharing a lot. And sometimes what you were sharing felt hurtful to me. Um, However you want to say it, it did. But I was like so excited that you were sharing and not withdrawing, that I was kind of like, okay, it's okay. This is a little bit hurtful to me, but I'm just so glad he's sharing. I didn't want to like shut it down. And then it sort of got to the point where I was like, this doesn't feel highest and best for me, at least, to to receive these types of messages moving forward. And I just feel like my higher self just kind of brought me back to like, what is highest and best here for all. And I think just the overall journey was just come back to myself. How can I best serve myself and you and our relationship, but start with myself. And I would just say, like, the whole relationship, I've been so gaga over you. And kind of like, I think partly because I had a very unhappy marriage. I didn't have very happy relationships before my marriage. And then I was alone for like 4 years doing all my inner work, my ascension, and sort of sensing my partner was coming in and really looking forward to that. And then you came in. And then I think I was just so happy and gaga over you and the relationship that I kind of let some of my own truth and sovereignty slide a little bit. Not horribly or anything, but little bits and pieces here and there. Because I was like, I love him so much and this relationship is so precious to me, and I don't want to do anything to endanger it, kind of was a bit, I think, part of my energy. Somewhat. And just like recently, I've just been like, that doesn't work. You can't, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That's not highest and best. I can't, that doesn't work. I have to come back to myself always. I have to put myself first. What feels in alignment for me? What is my truth? And then hopefully that is harmonious with you. But if it's not, then it's not. I can't abandon myself for anything.
Yep.
That's what I really learned through the past couple of months, because the worst feeling is not being abandoned by you. The worst feeling is being abandoned by myself. That is the worst feeling. That is the worst feeling.
Yeah.
That's what I really realized. So that gives you like a strength when you realize that above all, I can't abandon myself. That is the worst outcome. So I will not abandon myself. I will stay in my truth. Hopefully it harmonizes with you. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I gotta be me.
Exactly.
So, we were talking about this on one of the streams earlier this week or last week about that the divine union is really two divine unions of each person kind of coming together, walking hand in hand. And I feel like over the past couple of months, maybe for both of us, our own union with ourselves got a lot stronger through some of our conflict. And, if everything had been like super hunky-dory between us the whole time, I wouldn't have had to come back to myself, right?
Yeah, if you if you're doing physical therapy on your leg with crutches and trying to walk with crutches, and you never take the crutches away.
Yeah.
Like that support, right? So
yeah,
as partners, for whatever reason, almost like it's I call it like divine confusion. Like it's divinely orchestrated learning confusion that comes in that basically says, but what will you do when your partner is not there for you?
Yeah.
Right? Because both of us basically felt the same thing. Both of us basically felt the other was not there for us at that moment.
Considering us, abandoning us.
Whatever it is, right? The other person's not the rock that I would prefer them to be for me now. they've done something or whatever. You know, when
Yeah.
we're in that the human or the 3D side of it, we can be like, they did this, said this, whatever.
Yeah.
But at the on the higher perspective of it, it becomes, for me anyway, it just became very clear that um, we both have to be good on our own, basically. Um, and that it's that stuff that facilitates all of that. So it all has a very deep purpose to our peace, and and allows us to walk without the crutches, basically. You know.
It's so funny. I might have already said this on the stream. If I did, forgive me. But on our You Are Your Own Hero channel, one night I was recording this topic of your true freedom, and it was about your own inner peace. Like everything else is icing on the cake, but like your true freedom is what we're talking about, is I'm okay on my own, and I at the very least have peace within me. And as I was recording that video, you and I were texting a bit, and it was quite volatile. It was really like, it felt like things were falling apart between us. And it just was so ironic to me that I was in the middle of taping that, okay, this stuff can happen, but you know what? I'm in my peace. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's really the only thing that you
It's
have.
the only thing you can count on.
It's the only thing you really have.
Your own self.
It's the only thing you really have proper agency in, as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes. It's the only, you are with yourself in the whole lifetime.
All you can do is choose how you show up.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes you're not really choosing.
And it might be misconstrued, misunderstood. Even if you think you're showing up in love, the other person might be like, no, you're not. And
exactly. So you can't, all you can do is do you.
Exactly. That's one of my favorite phrases, is just, I just want to keep showing up in the best version of myself. And hopefully all is well, but all I can do is work on myself, commit to myself, be my best. That's all I can do. That's all I have control over. I don't have control over anything else. I don't really have any control over that. Really,
and I think that's why a lot of these relationships start off at a distance and stuff too, is because
we had to build that.
Humans are lazy.
Yeah.
Like if we were just
resistance.
Yeah, we would just lean on each other unhealthily.
We would.
And absolutely. we wouldn't grow as much. So
I totally would have. And I'm Libra South Node, so I've done partnerships over and over again, different lifetimes. It's very easy for me to like kind of fall and lean on that. No, it was great. It was great what happened, because it brought me back to myself. It's very possible I'll fall out of it again. I don't think, I think it takes some practice to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, because we're going to spend 6-7 days together right now. And I think it might be easy for me to fall a bit out of it, because
as soon as this camera turns off, I'm going to freak out. It's funny too, if you actually look at our messages and stuff, they're pretty like I don't know about you, but I've been in some fights. We've never had a fight.
Okay, so maybe this will help us understand each other, because to me, the texts have been like the roughest I've ever had in any relationship, which you're like shocked.
I'm shocked, yeah.
The texts that we have been the hardest for me I've ever experienced.
The things that people have said to me are far
worse.
Are just atrocious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
atrocious.
For me, this is like kind of the worst it's ever been.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that helps me a lot, because like sometimes I felt like I say something that, yeah, it's a little agitated, but it's also, keep in mind, I don't know how to talk about my feelings, really. that
Yeah,
well.
I know that, and I've really tried to keep that in mind.
So I'm,
I
and
know.
I'm a little, I'm a guy. It's a
Yeah,
little gruffer.
it's your Chiron wound as
I don't
well.
really know how to talk about it.
Yeah,
So it can come out a little harsh, severe,
yeah.
cold, or whatever, a
I
little
think
angry, and like you know, uh, so for me, these things are like, they're not. I wouldn't even call them fights or like arguments, really. Even like, uh, I'm I'm just being a little coldly direct with my some of my wounding to me. That's sort of how I'm doing it in my perspective. I wouldn't say that it's very kind necessarily, but I would say that it is, it's authentic expression in the moment of how I'm feeling, and sometimes I'll communicate like something that feels like kind of hopeless, or whatever it is. Uh and yeah, so for me though, these are like nothing at all. Now, however, the emotional investment that I have is way, way higher here. So even these little things are very intense for me. But the way that we're actually talking to each other, or the way that I'm talking, doesn't seem that bad to me. It
Oh, I'm
doesn't.
glad that we're talking about this because I think it'll just help us understand the
Like
other
you
more.
actually asked, you said, how would you feel if I said these things to you? And I was like, I I wouldn't feel anything. I would I wouldn't feel anything about it. I would I don't know. I'd if you did it, I'd be like, oh, this is different for her style. What's this about? I'd be curious about all that. I might feel like it's a little harsh, um, but that's about it. It wouldn't hit me very much.
So I
Um,
want to say two things. I just want to say again that for me, you're going to probably laugh. Like the conversations we've been having on text for me have felt catastrophic.
yeah, no, I'm starting to get it. I I haven't been able to fully get it. Um, I think I've seen a lot of the crappiest type of interrelational behavior that is possible, all the way into physical abuse, and so for me, like someone saying something snarky or sarcastic, or like, that's it's not even kid gloves for me.
Oh, like, and for me, it's like, for me, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so toxic. Oh my God. I got out of a horrible marriage and now this is happening. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, what has gone
And
wrong?
that's actually been a big source of my discomfort with it, because you've basically been kind of repeating that a lot. And I've been like, you're making it sound like I'm a monster. Like that's how it's coming across to me a little bit. And I'm like, this is nothing at all. Like to me, right? In my experience, my framing of what I've seen, that I've been involved in, and what's happening now, the intensity is very, very high, but the actual words and stuff are
Like
like so tame to me.
I've never really had a man talk to me this way, like this harshly. Even,
Really?
yeah, this is the most harshly I've ever been talked to.
Well, I guess I'm happy to be your first angry man. Um, I you know, it doesn't surprise me that much. Um, but it makes a lot more sense now. I'm understanding it, and hopefully it makes a little more sense to you why, to me, this is like, I don't think that these things are gonna hit you as hard as they do. I don't
I just
realize.
I have a very hard time with like sarcasm, snarkiness,
Yeah.
assumptions. I I'm not sure how you perceive how I communicate with you, but I don't think that I communicate that way. That's not how I'm wired, and I just have a very hard time dealing with it. It's like kryptonite for me. It feels very toxic to me.
Yeah, no, it is like sarcasm. I agree with you on these
And
things.
also keep in mind, I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy. I have studied what works for couples and what doesn't work. And so much research shows that sarcasm, snarkiness, assumptions, all the stuff that has kind of been happening is really not good for the longevity of a relationship. So I'm very attuned to that as well professionally, you
Mm.
know? So in my personal experience with other relationships and just professionally, I have a very hard time with that. I think it's not healthy
No,
for
it's sarcasm's not healthy. You know, um, I'm starting to feel like I'm defending myself, so I'm just gonna
Oh
stop.
yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
it's
don't want you
okay.
to feel that way.
I'm just not gonna do that.
Yeah, yeah. Now I think what's
I
interesting is that you're coming from a context where you haven't seen it as such a big deal, and I'm just coming from a different context. It doesn't mean one is more right or wrong. I'm just glad we had this discussion because I didn't understand from your viewpoint how you. I was kind of like, I can't believe he's doing this. What's he thinking?
I've had people tell me to kill myself and stuff like so
Okay.
it's gone about as like just bananas as possible for me.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess just on the lower spectrum, like I agree that sarcasm's not helpful. I would never suggest that sarcasm's helpful really to any conflict. Sarcasm's usually just sort of a defense mechanism. Someone's hurt, and so they sling back,
Yeah.
right? And that's when it comes out of me is when I'm hurt. I might let one slip, but I'm not sarcastic to you. I have been, but
No,
uh,
usually not.
I think probably maybe 2 times I've been sarcastic. I think, uh, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So I agree entirely that any hostile type conversation is not ideal. Like it's not necessarily helpful. However, um, I don't know how to talk properly when I'm upset about something or
Yeah,
when
and I
I'm
know that, and I
traversing
know,
these stories. So
yeah, and I
the
know,
the hostility that's in me comes out a bit in the
right,
conversation. So
right.
uh, and then on reflection of it, I when you say stuff like this has been the worst, and I look over it and I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. Really, I respect it, I honor it. Obviously, it's a big deal for her, and so basically, I just try to make notes for myself, I guess, to be more aware. But
I think each one of us, it sounds like, has had different experiences. And also, I think each one of us is a bit wired differently. To me, have a very soft touch. I feel I'm very gentle in how I communicate. And that's what I'm sort of most comfortable with receiving. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong necessarily. I just think it's just different experiences, different personalities, different comfort zones. So it makes sense that, you could be like, I don't understand why she thinks this is so terrible. And I'm like, I can't understand why he's talking to me like this. So I'm glad that we discussed this because I think I understand, your point of view better now.
yeah, yeah, it's good that we talked about it. Um, so yeah, I think don't be sarcastic with your partner. Uh, don't be like Sean. Um, but
Well,
I think there's something to say as well about like if your partner, like, just, I guess, trying to show myself a little bit of compassion, if your partner doesn't know how to properly communicate yet, especially like, man, I've never talked
Yeah.
about these things with anyone. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how to do it.
Yes.
And my emotions are often transmuted into irritation, frustration, and anger. That's generally where
Yeah.
the masculine drive starts to move in emotionality,
Yes.
until they're better at identifying and talking about it.
Yes.
And so, um, you know, kind of a bit of what they're saying isn't like how they feel truly. They're just upset. And you know, you have to be kind of set. For someone like myself, it's really easy to just know that, because
Yeah.
I've had so many things said to me or done to me, that when someone's upset, I know that they'll do whatever, and it's not actually reflective of their true feelings. It's reflective of their animalistic instinct and protective nature,
Yeah.
and that stuff. And it's
Yeah.
not really about them as a being. It's about their survival for them.
Yes.
So so I think it's good that we uncovered this. And you know, like, it's interesting because that was, you know, if we get down to the root of it, all I was wanting was for us to come together, right?
Yeah.
And so I was upset that it didn't seem like we were doing that. um
Yeah.
and I was getting progressively more upset about that, because it
Yeah.
seemed like I was bringing it up, and then we'd have more things coming
Yes.
up. So, uh, you know, I got to, I guess, a place where I was just like kind of tired of having the conversation at all,
Yeah.
and but still feeling like I should.
Yeah.
And then you know, there's just excuses, but um yeah, I guess trying to talk about things in the middle of the emotion. You know, I've been saying this the whole time, and we try, but I I don't think it works well to do that. Um, at least not yet. Like, uh, whoever's upset, afraid, whatever, uh, that energy affects the other person, and then it
Mhm.
just becomes this thing. So unless the other one can just hold peace without being moved by their partner being upset and stuff, they literally have to be indifferent to it in a
I
way.
and I think I don't I don't know if this is what you experience with me, but I think often I'll go like right into sadness. Um
Yeah.
Not always. I think gone into frustration or anger, but I think if you go into sadness, which I do think is what kind of underlies all of it, is like a hurt, a pain, a sadness, a disappointment, maybe a fear. I think what's usually at the very bottom of all these things is just like pain and fear and sadness, and
Hmm.
anger is sort of on top of that. So I do think if you can go really deep and share that, I think that can go well. I think when you're sharing at the level of anger and there's sort of hostility and maybe a bit of lashing out, that can be harmful or hurtful. But if it goes deep into the like, core sadness, I think that can be really beautiful to share that. Like, I'm just feeling so sad that I felt like not considered by you. I feel so sad about it. I feel like heartbroken. That is, I think, easy for the other person to come in because they don't feel attacked. I think I felt attacked a lot, you know, rightly or wrongly, but I think that is what my human felt. And then it's just if I felt like, oh my God, I gotta protect myself, I'm being attacked. Um, but if it's this vulnerable, like I want to be close to you and you're doing these things that seem like hurtful to me, and I want to be close to you. Like leading with that, I think can be really beautiful. And I'm not saying that I necessarily do that, but I want to do that. I want to just go right into like the vulnerable, like sadness, or I don't know if sadness is the right word. The pain, just go right into the pain. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out where I land on it all. With these things.
I think it's great that we're in the thick of it, because if we were just withdrawing and not doing anything, we're not making any headway. I think it's great that we're trying to communicate to each other. Maybe things could go a little smoother. We might have some ideas to shift things. But I think it's great that we're trying. I think it's great that we're in the mess of it. Yeah. And talking, and what I want to say about the topic of the stream about moving through these disagreements, I think what we're doing right now is the thing to do, is just to talk about it. And like when we each shared our perspective on the texting, that was really helpful to me. That, oh, for you, this is like mild.
Yeah.
For me, it's hot. For, you know, in like spiciness. For you, this is nothing. This is mild. I'm like, oh my God, I'm burning up. Because I didn't know that. So I think it's a constant like getting to know each other, a constant like understanding of the other. You know, I always go back to this phrase from my doctoral education. How does this person's behavior make sense given their context? So for both of us, what we just shared, you know, me being like, oh my God, this is catastrophic. And you're like, this is nothing. You know, it makes sense given what we've experienced in the past. So I just think this type of sharing afterwards, the debriefing, I would say we're debriefing. I think the debrief is what helps us move through the disagreements and possibly avoid some disharmony or disagreements in the future. It's the debriefing about it.
Yep.
And it can be time consuming.
Yep. It takes some dedication.
It takes some dedication. Yeah. What do you think? Are we ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. So I guess perspective, try to keep it in perspective is probably what I would leave with. Just keep the things in perspective. This thing doesn't really matter that much. It's like transitory.
Sort of assume the best of the other person. Like, you know, it's just come out in this conversation that for you, this wasn't a big deal the way we were communicating. So like, just assume the best of your partner, that there's, you know, innocence where everyone is an innocent here, and you'll sort of get to the bottom of it eventually and understand each other more eventually. So grace, compassion, patience, assume the best, hold faith, choose love and faith.
There you go. All right.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and we have an awesome Patreon community as well.
And thank you, Joe and Jamie. I've been reading all your comments. I'm going to send them to Tassel. We always read them. So thank you for all the chit-chatting and stuff. We're not ignoring you. We're just trying to stay on topic, because otherwise we'll stray away for days. Yeah. So
I'd be so curious. You know what would be really fun is to do a stream and interview Joe and Jamie about their relationship. I would love that.
We'll leave that out there for them, and they can let us know if they're interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.